Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and because it's a Tuesday we are about to reveal the answer to our Monday mystery. Now, we had quite a few people message us and also comment on what the correct answer was, and unfortunately we've only got one person that's got the correct answer, and that is someone that answers or comments on our Monday mystery on a regular basis, and that is Christopher. So Christopher, you have got the right answer, but unfortunately everyone else that's commented, you've got the wrong answer, and I'll go through the answer in a second. So the items for our Monday mystery this week were these, and these are not made of metal, they're not made of wood, they are in fact made out of clay, and they're pretty heavy things, they're quite chunky things. But as I mentioned in the Monday mystery guess really, I said these are made in different sizes, and that's true. I've actually handled one of these items that's about that long, so pretty small, and they go from anything from about that size up to about this size. So they come in a variety of sizes really. Some of them are made out of your typical what we would now call terracotta coloured clay, but most of them, especially the one that I've handled, are usually made out of a very cheap clay, which is also used in making pipes, what we would often call pipe clay, for example. So they're quite white in colour. Archaeologically, some people do actually find them, assume that they are actually clay pipe stems, and it's only when they look closely that they reveal or they notice that there is no hole running through the centre. And actually that's a good way of telling. If it's pipe clay material, doesn't have a hole running through it, it's probably what I'm about to reveal. But let's look at the wrong answers first. I'm not going to mention any names, but some people thought it was, for example, a letter seal. In other words, you take a sheet of paper, you wrote your letter on it like we did in a previous video, and then you fold up your letter sheet and then you drip some sealing wax. And quite a few people did suggest on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram that it was actually for putting a seal onto that wax. The answer is it's not. Some of these do have makers' names on, and they do look a bit like a seal, but these are made for a completely different use. Now, we also had some people saying that they are used to hold cutlery. For example, you have a nicely laid table, you place these down, and then you have, for example, the knife, spoon and the fork laid on them, so they're off the table. Now, we actually have some Victorian ones of those, and they're actually made out of silver. They look really, really nice, and they match with everything else on the table really. Very, very nice silver table service. However, these are not seals, they're definitely not holders for cutlery. They are in fact, and Christopher was the only one that got this one right, they are actually wig curlers. Now, some people actually give them the foreign name, which are roulettes, but they are in Britain known as wig curlers. So Christopher, you're the only one that actually got this one 100% correct. They're wig curlers, so you're probably wondering what they are used or how they are used, and I'll explain that as well. Now, by the mid to late 17th century, more and more people were starting to wear wigs, and there was a reason for that. Now, throughout history, we have always suffered with parasites living on our bodies. If you think back even as far back as the Stone Age, we would have been crawling with all sorts of things, and we're talking about human fleas, for example. We're talking also about things such as lice, and we're not just talking about lice in the hair, but also body lice. Now, if that was the case, most people would find it very irritating going to bed at night, spending most of their night scratching away. You'd get very little sleep, believe it or not. And by the 17th century, a lot more men and women in some cases were shaving their hair completely off. Now, what they wanted to do is still keep up with the latest fashions, the fashions that everyone was wearing at the time. So what they generally did was purchase a wig. Now, wigs have been around for a very long time. We know ancient Egyptians wore wigs, for example, and did similar. They would shave their hair and wear a wig. We also know Romans had very, very extravagant wigs that they used to put on, especially when they were attending a feast, for example. And that's why you get some statues with these amazing hairdos as such. So that was really down to the wigs that they were wearing. But by the 17th century, your standard wig that was being worn, especially by the time of the Restoration in 1660, was something that we call the periwig. And the periwig is this style just of here, and hopefully you can see that just of there, and it really consists of three parts of hair. You often have these side pieces coming down at the edge, so these hang in front of your shoulder really, and then at the back you have the long tail going down the back, and these were really popular by the time you get to the Restoration period. But like I said, wigs have been around for a long time. Now, these were known as periwigs, and the interesting thing about that's where we get the name, as we still use today, wig. It comes from that. It's a shortened version. Instead of saying I'm putting a periwig on, we shorten it to I'm putting a wig on. So by the time of, for example, Samuel Pepys and Charles II, it was common to shave the hair off, and that really reduces the amount of lice that a person has. So when he goes to bed at night, he takes his hair off, lies down, and he can relax without itching at least his head. When he gets up in the morning, he will take his periwig, his wig that sits on a stand next to the bed, and he will place it on. And what they would do is, if you were going to buy a wig in the 1600s, for example, is you would go to a wig shop. There would have been a lot of them around, and you would have chosen a colour. For example, you could have grey, you could have white, you could have black, you could have brown. Grey and white seems to be the very popular colours, mainly because they say the greying of the hair shows a person of great wisdom, a more mature person. So if you have grey hair, don't dye it, because it shows that you are a wise person as such. And what you would do is, once you've chosen your colour, you may want to ask for a style, a set style. And what they often used to do is they would take the hair, and these were sometimes made out of animal hair, but more commonly human hair, and they would wash them first. So as you can imagine, this would be straight hair. So you would have the straight hair, you've washed it, you've soaked it, you've cleaned it, and then what you would do is you would heat these up in boiling water, take them out, and you would very carefully sculpt the hair around them. So they're very much like the wig curlers or hair curlers that you get later on in history. But then, this is the strange bit, the wig would then sit inside an oven, not to burn, but just enough to fix the wig, very much like people used to do years ago when they used to sit under those strange brainwashing devices, I used to think of them really, and that would set the wig to how you wanted it. And that's one of the styles that they often used to have. But if you have a look on places like Google image search, if you look at wigs, there are many of them, lots and lots in fact. And just like we would go and have a haircut, hopefully when lockdown finishes I will be able to get mine cut. But if you imagine it, as we would do going to a barber, some people would take their wig in to get replenished as such. So it would be washed again, it would be set again, or if you were very, very rich, you would just buy a new one. But some people did try and set their wigs at home, and what you would need for that is obviously the wig curlers again, and you would put these into boiling water and you would try and make it or do it the best you can at home. Now, the other interesting thing about the periwig is these were often greased as well. So you would put in the equivalent of lard, and then you would cover them in powder as well, and the powder would stop the grease getting onto clothing, for example. And some people also had wig bags, for example. There was even a set of bellows that could be used to squirt on the powder. And we have a lot of sayings that come from wig wearing. For example, the most famous one is the saying big wig, for example, referring to a very extravagant wig. When we get to the 1700s and the 1800s, wigs do go through some changes. For example, they start to get higher on the head, and some women actually had some quite extravagant ones. If you have a look at some of the balls that took place years ago, sometimes you would see great ships and things like birds and feathers on the hair as well. And obviously, if you look at the fashions or the buildings in Georgian times, the doorways get higher, the ceiling gets higher, and that's really down to the fact these big wigs were that big. You didn't want all your guests ducking in as they come into your home. Anyway, Christopher, you got the answer right. These are in fact wig curlers, used really in the 17th century, and from the age of the Restoration up to the 1800s really, they were really popular. And as we said with our little comment on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, if you're upper class, you need these things to keep yourself looking good. Anyway, on that note, stay in, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.